Okay, so what we talked about on Friday, we talked about how to graph some linear functions, but we did the x and y intercept. So we were able to find the x and y intercept, plot these 2 points, and then draw the line. Today we're going to look at 2 other ways to graph a linear function, and one of the ways is to actually make a table of values and then plot these points and then graph them. And then the other one would be using the slope and y-intercept. So these are different ways to graph a linear function. In grade 11, we're going to learn more about how to graph quadratic functions. Okay, but it's a good skill set to know how to graph linear functions for later on. So in any function that you have, you can always do a table of value and then graph the function. So whenever you're stuck, table of value is the way out of when you're stuck. Okay, set a table of value. Find x, so do whatever, set x to whatever values, and then find the y value, because the x is your independent and the y is your dependent. Okay, so in this case it tells you that a set of order pairs. Sorry, I'm ahead in my thinking. Pairs. So that means points. Okay, it tells you here to set your x values to -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Technically, the x values can be anything you want. You can plug in any x values that you want. Okay? So for the purpose of this question, it sets you up to -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then what we have to do to find the y value, you have to plug in the value of x in your equation. So x in this case is -2. You plug in -2 for x, and you solve. Okay? So 3 times -2 is -6. Add 2, that is -4. So that you know that when x is equal to -2, y is equal to -4. That's an order pair. That's a point. So I can locate that point on the graph. So if I have -2 is right here on the x, I go down to -4, so my point is right here. Are we okay with that? I can do the same thing with -1, so I plug in -1. So that's -3, add 2, that's -1. So my point is going to be -1 for x, -1 for y. So I can find this point, it's right here on my graph. Okay, x is -1, y is -1. And if I plug in 0, 3 times 0 plus 2, that equals to 2. Okay? Remember that what we talked about the other day is when I set x equal to 0, I'm finding the y-intercept. You guys remember that from Friday, right? Whenever I set y equal to 0, that means I'm finding the y-intercept. So I'm expecting this to be my y-intercept. So x equals 0, y equals to 2. It is, right? You see that point is on the y-axis. I can see my line, right? But I can, the question is asking me to fill out the table, so I have to do everything. So 3 times 1 plus 2, so 3 times 1, that's 3, plus 2, that is 5. So that's going to be 1, 5. I don't think I can fit the last point, but I'm going to find it. So y equals 3 times 2 plus 2, so that's 6 plus 2, that is 8. I can't put it on my graph, so I'm just not going to bother putting it. But you guys can see that the line is pretty straightforward. Let's see if I can. Okay, you're going to have to try your best to fit all the points. It's hard for me on the board. Are you guys understanding? Okay. So this is basically graphing a line using a table of values. This method you can use for any kind of function. Okay? It doesn't have to be only for a linear function. questions about this? All right. The third way to graph a linear function, and this is mostly specific, it's special for only linear function, is using the slope y-intercept form. Okay? With a linear function, you can write your equation in a slope y-intercept form by rearranging the equation into the form y equal mx plus b, which means you want the y by itself on one side and the x's and whatever else is on the other side. Okay? What do we call m? What does m represent? M represents the slope of the line. And slope is rise over run, which is the steepness of your line. Okay? So we know that the slope, we're going to talk about this, but we know that the slope is rise over run. So how much does your graph go up by versus how much does it go over by? Okay? Or it's the steepness. So how steep is your line? And B is, what does B represent? It's slope, y-intercept. So B represents your y-intercept. I want to take you back up here for a second. Here. What was the y-intercept? 2, right? Is it 2 right here as well? Yeah? So without even me doing the math and plugging 0 for x when it's in this format, I can right away say that 2 is my y-intercept without doing the math. Okay? Because that number that comes after the x term is my y-intercept. Okay? So, B is the y-intercept. Equation in the y equal mx plus b format, then you're going to start by plotting your y-intercept. So plot your b, find your y-intercept on your graph, and then you're going to use m, which is rise over run, to complete the graph. Okay? So let's look at an example because it makes more sense when we look at examples. So, does this look like this to you? Is y by itself? No. Y is not by itself. Y is accompanied by 2 and by 3x. I want to get rid of everything, keep y by itself here. Okay? So the first thing you want to do, you want to bring the 3x over and use the opposite operation. So that's going to be negative 3x plus 4. Does that make sense? We're isolating for the y. Okay, so we're bringing the 3x over, it's a plus 3x, by bringing it over it becomes negative 3x. What's happening with the 2 and the y? What kind of operation is going on there? Multiplication. To get rid of that multiplication here, what do I have to do? I have to divide. So to get rid of that 2, I have to divide every term by 2. Yes? Okay? Because I want to get rid of that 2. So to do that, I have to divide everything by 2. Yes?
We can divide 4 by 2 separately.
Yes.
While you're dividing 3 by 2.
You have to divide everything by 2. You have to divide every term by 2. Right? I have 2 terms in here. I have the negative 3x and I have the 4. And each term has to be divided by 2. Okay? So, when I do that, I get negative 3 over 2x plus 2. No. I'll send it to Alina. Okay, so what is your slope and what is your y-intercept? What's your y-intercept? Is it easy to find? 2 is your y. And your slope is? Negative 3 over 2. Remember, we said that the m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Look at this. Y equals, instead of m I have negative 3 over 2, x plus, instead of b I have 2. Do you guys see that? I'm looking for an answer. Do you see that? Do you see the similarity here? Now, let's locate the y-intercept. The y-intercept is at 2, so if I look at the y-axis, 2 is right here. Okay? Now, my slope says it's negative 3 over 2, which means if I take the negative 3 over 2, and I know that the slope is equal to rise over run. Okay? So that means I'm rising by negative 3, which means I'm going down by 3, and over by 2. That's what it means. So, starting with the y-intercept, I'm going to go down 3 and over 2. So that would be where my next point is. I can go down 3 and over 2, and I can find my other point. Yep. So I start with a y-intercept, and because my slope is negative 3 over 2, that means instead of going up, I'm going to have to go down 3, and I'm going to have to go over to the right 2. Okay? Down 3 to the right 2. So I take my point and I go 1, 2, 3, and then 2 to the right. And this is where I'm going to stop. Okay? So if you see here, if I join these, that forms a straight line, doesn't it? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take question number 2 and do that. And then you can work on question number 3 as well. Okay, so 2 and 3.